No, we don't want that.
We're webinaring here.
Hi, everyone. Folks are coming on. We're just going to wait a couple more minutes for everyone to join, and we will start it shortly. Thank you.
We're not live.
You're on live?
Yes. Can we?
I just moved. Ooh. Everyone's muted. Hi, everyone. So just to let you know, we are starting in just a minute. We're just waiting for a few folks to come on. We will proceed soon. Thanks.
Let's squish in a little bit more.
You can also have it. This is better. We can always move the screen like that.
Oh, okay.
If we want to do that.
Maybe from person to person.
Yeah, we can do that.
Sense.
This is interesting. It doesn't mute.
Yeah, let's go.
All right, great. Thank you all. Welcome to the Green Jobs webinar at Power. And I'm actually going to turn it to Rabbi Julie to kick us off.
Hi. We are excited to be in a conversation with so many people who care about climate crisis and extreme inequality, and with so many people who have incredible experience and expertise. We have learned so much from so many people, and we are eager today to share what we've been working on. I'll just start with some quick introductions. I'm Rabbi Julie Greenberg. I'm part of Power's Clergy Caucus and also Economic Dignity Team.
I'm Anthony Giancadrino. I'm a fellow here at Power, working with the Climate Justice Work and Economic Dignity Team.
Hello, my name is Terry Bergen. I am with Power's Economic Dignity Team and also a member of our Climate Justice Committee.
And we'll just have Lena, if you could just do a quick intro since she'll be joining us as well.
Sure. My name is Lena Blunt. I work with the Earthquaker Action Team, where I'm on the board, and have the great pleasure of working with Terry and Rabbi Julie and so many others from Power on our Power Local Green Jobs campaign.
So some quick background on Power. Power burst onto the scene 6 years ago as a faith-based organization to create a city and state of opportunity that works for all. And in order to accomplish that vision, we set up an education equity action team to look at fairness in public education, especially in the area of funding. We set up an economic dignity team to look at living wages, and we've done our green jobs work under the auspices of the economic dignity team, and also a criminal justice reform team. A little over a year ago, we called together a poverty summit, and we invited people to testify on all of these issues. And out of that information, we unveiled a platform for ending poverty in 10 years. And living wage jobs with local ownership was a key plank in this platform. As people of faith, we're called to be stewards and sustainers of life on the planet that is God's creation. We see it as a moral obligation to steward life on this planet and to protect the delicate nexus of humanity on an earth. But also we see that there's a great gateway of opportunity as the whole world turns towards renewable energy. And we can't separate out economic and racial issues from this opportunity. We want to move forward in a way that actually builds a racially and economically just human presence on this planet. And especially since people on the front lines are impacted the most from environmental pollution and rising seas and economic extraction. Most often these are people of color, low-income people. And we know that all of the issues that we care about, health, housing, jobs, education, food security, will be exacerbated and undermined by climate crisis. And so this climate justice work helps us to discuss these challenges in a unified way. We work at the intersection of race, the economy, and climate. And to help us situate this work, we've created a framework for our Green Jobs work. And this is a framework for building the beloved community, a racial and economic justice community on a livable planet. We hold the intersection of race and economics as key lenses for the climate conversation. We make front and center the voices of people most impacted by poverty, racism, and climate crisis. Black, brown, poor, and immigrant communities and allies are building a multi-faith, multiracial movement to transform the old energy economy into an inclusive, clean energy economy. We believe the rights and dignity of workers are essential to any transition from a fossil fuel economy to a renewable one. We stand for healthy lives for all, pathways into green jobs, local and inclusive investment in green infrastructure, solutions that build economic opportunity, lift people out of poverty, and challenge racism as we work for a livable planet. We build bridges between urban and rural communities, the United States and global communities to create a racially and economically just movement that is both very local and very universal, putting community and care of the earth over exploitation and greed.
Thank you. And so with that framework, Power set out to expand on our plank from the Black Work Matters Poverty Summit of last year. And one of the planks was a Green Jobs plank. And we did a report that followed up on that great work and research of last year. And I'm just trying to understand, what does this mean for Power as we step into advocating for green jobs? So a few key points as we go through the summary of the findings is, one, this provides an overview of what is possible and helps us to see where we can go. These numbers are not static. These numbers are not standalone for us to just always count 15,000 alone and that's it. These are really supposed to be what is possible, what is a building block for how we can build the beloved community. And we offer actually a more conservative estimate than necessarily one that is much more wide-ranging. Two, the type of job matters. So we weren't looking at jobs that were just 3 to 6 months. We were looking at jobs that were around a year and more. For consistency, and also jobs that did not just pay minimum wage, but actually paid living wage jobs, which we thought is really critical as part of the rest of Power's commitment to the beloved community as family sustaining jobs. And so we looked at those jobs. And three, we see this work as a way to push forward a vision that so many of you have been helping to shape already for Philadelphia that really intersects that race, the economy, and the climate. So many of you have been doing amazing work, and so we're very excited that you are on with us. And how do we actually build together in the city, but also within our region of Southeast Pennsylvania, and even across the entire state, to build opportunity for all. So what do we mean by green jobs? This is just very broad. So we are talking about energy efficiency. We're talking about renewable energy manufacturing, installation, construction, looking at water infrastructure, urban ag, and land use, to public transportation, recycling and zero waste systems, green building infrastructure, bike maintenance, and it can go on. So it can also include nurses, women and men who are providing childcare, people who are actually doing any work that is non-extractive, that is actually providing opportunities for families and communities as well as the environments, which is a pretty broad definition, we know, but we also want to bring a holistic lens to what we mean by green jobs, and it's not just green construction, it's much bigger than that. Given that, it's also hard to assess all those numbers, and so we focused in on this report, particularly around the solar work and a couple other kind of green construction jobs to really hone in as what's possible with some interventions now. In that frame, again, you know, to follow up with what Rabbi Julia talked about with our framework, we were talking about a just transition, not a technical transition alone. So we do need a technical transition. We want all forms of safe energy with guaranteed energy affordability and rights to access in an inclusive, healthy economy, but it's got to be fair, and we want to have a fair and just transition to that. And so how this matters is really critical, and that's partially what we put forward today, is describing how that a fair transition for workers who now work in the fossil fuel industry but need new jobs in order for their life to continue on the planet, for their families, is really critical, just as it is really critical for folks who are actually suffering environmental injustice today, having a way to be able to live in a community without having poor air and have to breathe. So that is the focus of what we look at when we talk about green jobs. So what is possible? So here is just, we put out, there's over 15,000 family sustaining jobs are possible that can lift 1 in 5 families out of poverty. The Black Works Matters report of last year highlighted that there are over 20% of the population is in poverty. So 15,000 jobs could actually be 1 in 5 families lifted out of poverty. And this just gives you a sense of some of the key places where we can see these potential. 9,000 jobs in energy efficiency, which was a study taken out of the ACEEE, which is the American Council for an Energy Efficient Economy, has studied the potential for Philadelphia. Those are the job numbers that have come up. 4,700 in transportation, and that was looking at research done by the Center for Neighborhood Technology that looked at if you actually expanded people who do not have access to transportation to have to be within 30 minutes of transportations and a job, particularly connecting urban to suburban areas, you could create 4,700 jobs using public transportation in ways that are more green than people having to drive in a car. Over 630 on food systems if we just minimally transfer just a tiny bit of our food payment in the city. We spend over $4 billion on food businesses. If we shifted just 2% to local ag, you could create 630 jobs there at a minimum. 520 on zero waste recycling programs that are run and owned as worker co-ops could be created through this. And then the focus that we're going to highlight today is this 2,700 number. These are the potential jobs, a very conservative estimate of jobs possible in solar PV based on the campaign that Power and Equate are currently working on. So if we get PECO to procure 20 by 25, so 20% of its electricity from local solar by 2025, this could create 2,700 good paying jobs in Philadelphia.
PECO, P-E-C-O, being our biggest electric utility in the area.
That's right. So very quickly, where we are now, on the slide on the left is the percentage of the jobs in the energy economy. No surprise to anyone, solar has actually overtaken the majority of energy jobs in this country. Just 26% are in fossil fuels, that being coal, oil, petroleum, natural gas. And we're looking at 14% wind, 51% solar, and 9% nuclear. So the majority of jobs already are in clean. And so what's that mean for Pennsylvania? Research shows that in 2016, the slide on the right will highlight the potential for jobs here. There's over 57,000 clean energy jobs already in Pennsylvania with an expected growth of 8%. And that ranks in solar, there's over 3,000 were employed in solar, and that ranks 43rd in the entire nation. So out of 50 states, Pennsylvania is 43rd, which does not match the potential for Pennsylvania to actually be a solar producer in the country. Research done by Delaware Riverkeeper shows that if we completely transition to 100% renewable energy by 2050, Pennsylvania would experience 500,000 job years, or an average of 14,300 jobs per year between now and 2050, if we actually went for the transition that included solar, winds, as well as electrification of our transportation systems. So there's a lot of potential, there's a lot of ways to grow, and so, which is creating a lot of excitement and opportunity, and again, the how we do that is really critical. So the focus on solar for us, again, is part of our campaign, which Lena will talk about in a second. And we looked at what would happen if PECO actually met that demands. And we find that in the Philadelphia region, solar construction and installation average over $20 an hour for one person. Living wage in Philadelphia is, depending on size of families, it ranges between $17 to $24 an hour for family. So it's right in that average, which is really critical. And research by the Berkeley Renewable and Appropriate Energy Lab shows that for every megawatt of solar installed, you can create 7 to 10 jobs. Based on the work here, we wanted to break that down. What does that actually mean? And so we broke it into different potential and opportunities. If PECO were to meet its commitment, that would be over 8 megawatts of solar. 8 gigawatts of solar, so 8,000 megawatts of solar installed, which could create about 60,000 jobs overall, but that could be short-term. It's not really looking at long-term jobs. So we want to break down what it means for long-term implications. So if we looked at residential solar potential, that would be looking at rooftop solar. Philadelphia has the technical capacity for 3 gigawatts of installed solar on rooftops here. So we just did some math based on 300,000 10 kilowatt projects and run those scenarios through the National Renewable Energy Labs program. You find that we could create over 850 annual jobs in construction and installation, and an additional 275 jobs in the supply chain. So just for residential solar, you would actually be looking at another 200 induced jobs, which are people that are working to support people in construction and installation, providing food, providing water, other resources available are considered induced because of this. There's over 1,300 annual jobs that would be created. And then looking at commercial projects, so looking at churches or nonprofits or other small businesses that want to do solar, we looked at 25,200 kilowatt projects, and that would end up with 1,400 annual jobs based on construction, supply chain, and then induced. What we did not include in this, that I want to be really clear, that actually would also help provide more job opportunities. We did not look at residential roof repairs, which would be considered a green job. We didn't have the technical capacity to be able to figure out the number of jobs there, but that would be a huge job sector as well. And then we also didn't include the maintenance, ongoing maintenance of the solar arrays. So this is just construction, installation, supply chain, and induced. It wasn't looking at the upkeep and maintenance of that as well. So we wanted to just kind of give a baseline of what's possible. And if PECO met that, that would be 2,700 jobs that pay $20 an hour or more, which would be a critical opportunity. So the last piece of the report that we just go through is, how do we get there? There are lots of steps we can take. There's, multiple steps, multiple pathways for all of us to move. And we wanted to kind of focus on three things for 4 different sectors to work on. So one for PECO, it's, looking at energy, not just as a commodity, but more as, partly that people need this to survive. And so they should stop terminating energy and make sure that energy is affordable. Commit to procure 20% of its electricity from local solar. So really actually come sit at the table with the people, with Equate, Power, and everyone else in the campaign to agree with a handwritten commitment to, and a handshake and an actual agreement that we will procure 20% of the solar over the next 10 years, or 8 years at this point. And then really invest those dollars into marginalized frontline communities that we've detailed in our first Black Works Matters report for those jobs. And so the PICO can move money through this procurement to the right areas for job opportunities. For the city, the city is doing a lot of things right now, and I think standard, whether it's a renewable energy job or if it's just broader green jobs through the Rebuild program or other efforts that the city is moving, they must mandate racial equity standards in all city projects. Power has been moving this in multiple campaigns, and we reiterate that for this particular campaign. We also know that resourcing and financing is a critical vacuum and challenge. And so we need a public bank. And so Power has been working with other partners and allies in the city to think about what it means to have a public bank and how can we use those resources to support worker co-ops, support green job development opportunities and training opportunities, and financing for people to be able to go solar. And then the city is sitting on 40,000 vacant lots that it controls through the land bank, that the city council has say on, and really thinking strategically about how do we use those land. So we have partners who are doing work in urban ag, have brilliant ideas about using land use for urban ag systems to support communities. Also thinking about how do we do that for green buildings and community-owned solar projects? How do we repurpose land that can be viable and grow a strong community in neighborhoods? And at the state level, as I mentioned earlier, Pennsylvania is 43rd in solar in the nation, and that is not equal to the potential that we have. And that is partially due to a really poor alternative energy portfolio standard, which really doesn't give a lot of incentive for the state to find new ways of creating renewables. We are a fossil fuel state. We are driven on previously coal, now natural gas. And so there's not a lot of impetus to move towards renewables. And so we are calling for a more robust RFPS that actually carves out local renewable energy projects as well. Create an equitable and transparent pay-as-you-save program that allows low-income and moderate-income homeowners to be able to finance renewable energy projects through their utility. That is at a guaranteed rate where they save on their utility bill, can pay back their investments over the utility bill so they don't have to put any upfront costs, and have local CDFIs kind of step in as a loan loss reserve to support any kind of potential default that doesn't fall on the low-income homeowner. And then establish a just transition fund for laborers and communities is also really critical for that financing piece. So a local green bank in the city and like a just transition fund over on the state. And the last piece I will close on, Powers also really thinks about it as it's not just something that PICO should do, the city should do, the states should do. This is actually something all of us have a role in. And so to reiterate Power's role in this, we need to be uniting around a racial and economic justice lens. We need to be building across the boundaries of urban, rural, suburban in the state to be able to build relationships and build a movement towards renewable energy and really deepen participatory and collaborative governance in this work. And so as we have more worker-owned co-ops, as we have green job opportunities, how are we actually doing that together as a community and not just waiting for some business to kind of step in? It's how do we do this together as well? And with that, I will close. We will open up to Q&A after the Equate piece of the campaign, and then a little conversation will lead to Q&A. So Lena, I'm going to turn it to you. Just going to take you off.
Great.
I feel so silly.
Great. Are we good?
Yep, we're good.
Excellent. Thank you so much to folks at Power for organizing this amazing report, doing all the research and work to show in very vivid detail that we do know solutions are out there. And in this next sort of 5 minutes, I'd like to talk a little bit about the Earthquaker Action Team and sort of in more detail about the Power Local Green Jobs campaign and what role we feel Equate is playing to really help make these transitions to local green jobs happen. So thank you to Anthony, Rabbi Julie, and Terry, everyone at Power for having this webinar, for organizing the report, and for inviting us on to tell a little bit of the Equate piece. So the Earthquaker Action Team started in about 2009, 2010. And I can just tell you very quickly, our sort of foundational purpose was around using nonviolent direct action to pursue economic, environmental, and racial justice. And our first campaign, we targeted one of the largest banks financing mountaintop removal coal mining and poisoning communities in Appalachia. So we worked on that campaign, Bank Like Appalachia Matters, from about 2009, 2010 through 2015, when we won. And that bank, PNC Bank, stopped their investments in companies that practice mountaintop removal coal mining. And then off of the success of that first campaign, Equate, I think, did some very deep discernment, prayer, and reflection on what we felt called to do next. And many of the founders of Equate are from the Philadelphia region. Philadelphia has been plagued with deep poverty for generations. Racial injustice is written into the landscape of our city. And I think in good conscience, we felt like we wanted to find a campaign that hit at this intersection of racial and economic justice. So in some early conversations with folks at Serenity Solar in North Philly, Morris Chapel, and a number of other community groups already doing work on these issues, this idea of a nonviolent direct action campaign for local green jobs was sort of born. So we, Equate, sort of started to launch some tentative actions in fall of 2015. And really, we're trying to test the waters with PECO, our electrical utility. You know, we knew that as a municipal utility that's supposed to serve this region, they were doing so little to react to the realities of climate change and economic and racial injustice in our city. So we had a number of actions sort of testing the waters with them. We invited them to complete the piece of the puzzle for green jobs in our region, invited the CEO, Craig Adams, to come down and put in about a 4-foot tall puzzle piece. We invited PECO to dance with us to get moving on climate change and powering local green jobs. And through most of fall of 2015, we really heard nothing. And so the Earthquaker Action Team, sort of with a spiritual grounding, believes that these issues can't wait. And so strategic and mindful escalation is sometimes necessary to put our values at the center and achieve really what our region needs for local green jobs. So in spring of 2016, I think we really started to accelerate in our partnerships with Power and in our tactics on the campaign. So it was in spring 2016 when Reverend Holston and others with Power showed up and helped do a solar teach-in in PECO's lobby. And spring 2016 is when we really gave PECO our first ultimatum. They were legally required at the time to expand their solar capacity a tiny amount in 2016. We said, hey, you know, you're legally required to expand this tiny amount. You should do that by investing in local solar, employing workers of color in neighborhoods that need it most here in North Philly and throughout the city. And if you don't commit to doing that, we're going to really continue this campaign and highlight how you're behind the times and you're not being a leader on climate change or economic and racial justice. So after delivering that ultimatum and joining with Power and putting more public pressure on PECO through actions at events where they were sponsors, they announced their first solar collaborative in May of 2016. So this first meeting was an event where both Power and Equate and a number of other stakeholders were invited, and very little was offered. You know, PICO really didn't have a plan. It was apparent that they thought they could just pull people together, you know, have this event, and maybe we would go away. But to their chagrin, we did not, and kept expanding through their full service area in the counties. So that was really a project of last summer, 2016, as well as the fall. And then this strategic escalation culminated in what some of the images that you see in front of you on the PowerPoint, which was a huge project we completed this spring with a lot of support from Power and Power Metro, which was the Green Jobs Walk, or excuse me, the Walk for Green Jobs and Justice. And the Walk for Green Jobs and Justice was a huge project over the span of I think almost exactly 2 weeks. Over 300 people engaged in a journey in some way, walking portions or showing up for an action, but a journey that was over 100 miles through PICO's service area. So we walked through, you know, 30 distinctive communities. We had over 15 different actions along the route, highlighting both sites of the fossil fuel past and sites of the vision we have for the future. So job training programs with Youth Build. We stopped in a number of places where communities and congregations are leading the way, are already doing the work to show that green jobs are possible. So through this journey, from starting in North Philadelphia, going into Delaware, Chester, Montgomery County, Bucks County, and then back into Philadelphia, we ended with sort of a triumphant final mile, walking through North Philadelphia to City Hall, joining with a number of folks from Power at City Hall. There were about 200 people, even despite the rain, and walking that final mile from City Hall to PICO's headquarters to demand that as our utility, they start to lead and that they invest in 20% solar jobs by local community members by 2025. So it's been absolutely a blessing to get to work with Power, to learn from the deep organizing and vision that you all have. And Anthony, you spoke about roles, and Equate likes to think that our role in this campaign is to really shine a light on the problem that PICO is not answering. You know, climate change is going to keep happening. We have this entrenched economic inequality and racial inequality in our city. And as your report so clearly outlines, there are solutions available. So Equate's job is to continue to create this problem for PICO, that their inaction is not acceptable. And I really do think Power and many others' role is providing these visionary solutions and doing the deep work in community that's helping to make a meaningful transition to powering local green jobs possible. There are a couple of ways that people can get involved with Equate, and I'll really quickly just share 3 that are coming up that folks can keep on their radar. Every month, we have our general meeting, which is open to anyone who's interested in the campaign and upcoming actions. General meetings are on the first Tuesday of every month, starting at 6:30 p.m. at the Friends Center, which is near 15th and Cherry in downtown. And our next general meeting is this coming August 1st, which is Tuesday, starting at 6:30 at Friends Center. And then the other invitation we'd love to extend to folks on the call today is, if you want to know about Equate strategy and what's coming up next. We're going to have an open strategy conversation and barbecue on Saturday, August 5th from 2:30 p.m. to 5 p.m. at 3100 Midvale. So that's 3100 Midvale. It's up in sort of the East Falls neighborhood of the Germantown area. It's at one of our board member, Eileen Flanagan's home. And it's just a chance to be in community, have some good food, talk about what's coming next, how we're going to keep strategically escalating and doing trainings in the counties, you know, following up on these relationships that were built during the Green Walk for Jobs and Justice, and making sure that no matter how much PICO is dragging their feet, we are not, and we are keeping loving pressure on them to lead to Power Local Green Jobs. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Lena.
Hello, everyone. Reverend Holston, Executive Director of Power. Glad to just stop in for a moment of this wonderful webinar, and excited about this great report that has been written by Anthony and Rabbi Julie. It is exactly what we need at this time to really, as Rabbi Julie says over and over, the intersection between racial justice, economic justice, and climate justice is one of the major issues of the 21st century, and how we bring those together around building a sustainable living space for all of us in this world and in this city is where we need to be at now. So this report with its recommendations are something that we're really going to push, particularly in the fall, to get our city council people and our state legislators and PICO itself lined up to be able to create the 15,000 jobs that are possible over the next 10 years. They can reduce the poverty rate of our city by 20% if we just follow these basic and really simplistic suggestions that this report gives that are basic and necessary for change in our city. So I'm excited for this webinar today as a beginning start, and excited for our work of our Economic Dignity Chair, Co-Chair Terry, and everyone here, and all of our work with Equate. Thank you so much as bringing this to us and allowing us to step forward to work together for this great change. So it's exciting to be a part of it, and I feel like that not long we're going to be reinventing what it means to be a Philadelphian and how to live in the city of Philadelphia. So thank you so much.
And before we move to an open discussion, I just want to extend an invitation also for people who would like to join Power's work under the auspices of the Economic Dignity Team on climate justice. We will be meeting on this coming Tuesday, July 25th at 5 o'clock at the Power office. And if you can't be at that meeting, you can go through the website and you can write into us that you'd like to be on the list of people who will be invited to future meetings to do that work. Next meeting is Tuesday, July 25th at 5 o'clock at the Power office.
So part of this is really kind of going into and explaining why Power, with all of our work of interfaith work we've been doing, this campaign matters to us, and how does this fit in with the rest of the work. So when this was presented to us, it really took us a bit to understand all of the dynamics of climate justice and how it really does relate to economic justice and racial justice. But I think once we learned and got a better understanding of how climate and climate injustice plays a part in inner city communities, and minority communities and poor communities, our deepening in our understanding of it's not just enough for us to create jobs and raise income if people are still not living healthy lives. And that combination of, one, an industry that has not fully been developed yet, and it also gives an ability for people who have majority and new new job markets have been either educated out or regulated out through our criminal justice system and rules that we have that don't allow access to everyone. And right now we have an opportunity to create an industry that is purposely being built to be inclusive. And to think about that for a second, of all of the industries we have, none of them have been designed to originally start as something inclusive. We could actually revolutionize how Americans think about industry, and where profit and value in industry are actually viewed. And it's an incredible opportunity, we think, that given the right push and partnerships, could really make a huge difference, not just in Philadelphia and Pennsylvania, but across America. Asking questions that we've never asked before and looking at this in a direction that's never been looked at before. And really empowering communities to lead and hold themselves accountable, not just for the profit, but also for the work of things to be done, to create the communities that make America great, and to really stand by those principles that we say matter to us. We revolutionized our country here, so why not revolutionize a new industry here? And so the other big question is, if we take this on, how can we make this work of strengthening climate justice and green jobs through the lens of racial and environmental justice in our networks and in the work that we do? For me, I think one of the really big things is the fact that this conversation we're having now combines so many different people with so many different backgrounds, and it is our ability to work together for a greater good. We are a faith-based initiative. I am Catholic, very proudly to say, and I think of Laudato Si, where we talk about this open communication and dialogue that needs to be happen for all of those who are involved. And when we're talking about, Pope Francis says, to hear a true cry of economic justice, we have to hear the cry of the poor as much as the cry of the earth. And that is very much what this campaign is about. It's about looking at a solution and combining both communities that have been taught that they don't matter, that this isn't their issue, that have paid the price for a lot of our environmental mischoices and quick decisions, and they're the ones who pay the price for that. They're the ones living in our sacrifice zones. There are communities that are dealing with homelessness and disease and health issues and being told they should be too busy worrying about those things to actually deal with solving those things. And this is a wonderful opportunity to deal with both the economic crisis that many communities in Pennsylvania are dealing with, but understanding that part of that crisis is the health crisis and the diseases and the problems that the concurrent infrastructure causes. And here's a wonderful way to find a full, holistic solution to those problems. So I think that's one of those places where we want to start, and kind of how we view this campaign and why this campaign matters and how we can help grow.
Thanks. Terry, want to add anything, Robert, Julie?
I guess I want to add one thing. I really want to hear from people who have signed on also. And I'll just say one thing quickly, which I think is at a national moment when there's zero leadership. And in fact, when brown people and black people and poor people and women and rural people are being targeted and doors of opportunity being slammed shut, this is an area where actually local responses can work and can make a huge difference. So it's really an invitation to do our local organizing and take on our local campaigns, because we do not have any national leadership, and we can make a very big difference locally.
So we're just going to open it up. I'm just going to unmute everyone. Sorry, it's just going to take a second here with that. And then, yeah, we can open this up to conversation to those questions, or if you also have feedback for the report or questions about the report itself or ideas in the report for us to kind of share in the space. We have about, I would say about 12 minutes for that. It's not a whole lot of time, but at least to start, and then we will kind of close out by 4 o'clock. So I'll just turn it out if anyone wants to add anything or offer a question. Someone trying to talk in? I'm not sure. Does anyone have any questions about the report? Comments? You should be on mute.
Anthony, can you hear me?
I can.
I was just going to ask what, how you can push Pico further. They're, you know, private company, and would you consider using? Are there levers or leverage that the state or the city or elected representatives can use to try to push them? Because I'm not sure that I don't know how likely they are to respond to things like marches and that kind of thing.
So one of our goals for this year is to really build the base of people who care about this, and to take education and information and responses to so many of the questions out into our communities, both congregational and beyond, and to, you know, really build out into the state, because we do need to have more regulatory and legislative leverage in order to pressure PICO to do what's right.
I think the other thing is we should not undermine PICO's fear, or not fear, that's not a good word, PICO's investment in their own image and their own kind of branding of themselves as this community service corporation, and they do value that a great deal. And so challenging them on that area has caused a great deal of reaction from them. And so I think there is a great deal of value in showing up at protests and things. They do listen, and they are increasingly listening more and more the more they realize more of us are showing up, and that we will continue to show up.
Great.
Basically, we're calling on PICO to be the best that they want to be. They are the ones who say they're smart leaders and they're our energy leaders. And so we're saying, okay, we expect you to really lead then. Be the best you can be.
So just a quick note, I just muted everyone, but everyone should have the ability to unmute. It was getting a little bit of feedback, but you can unmute if you have a question. There was a question written in, just I'll read this out. How much is the problem PICO or the legislature? And it's a little bit of both, I would say. And so, you know, from a legislature standpoint, you know, there's a lot to be desired. We definitely need to push and shift how the legislature looks at energy from, again, as I mentioned earlier, changing the alternative portfolio standard to actually giving the Public Utility Commission more leeway to regulate more progressively and proactively. There's a big challenge. That being said, I am a firm believer that energy is a vehicle of many. There's many vehicles: education, food, energy, water. There's lots of vehicles we can to create change. Energy is one that really combines a lot of opportunities across the state. People, you know, Lancaster has a ton of solar and winds compared to the rest of the state. A lot of communities want more kind of energy democracy, community control. So you do have Republican legislators who are interested in those conversations. We have to find those building blocks and entry points to build with their communities across the state there. And we mentioned earlier, you know, about just transition. Coal is not coming back because of automation, because of economic reasons. There's a lot of reasons. There may be a plant opening here and there, but the long game, coal is not happening. And there's a lot of communities devastated by the loss of the coal industry. We need to provide a better vision and a shared and collaborative vision with those communities. And so I think that's another way to shift the legislature. That being said, PICO, it doesn't generate electricity, given our deregulated state, but they can move how they buy their electricity and how they move resources. And so they can make decisions on shifting where they procure energy and thinking about doing it in different ways. So it's really making an argument. I think one of the key arguments we need to move PICO on is, what do we actually talk about the cost? Because a lot of the arguments are, oh, it's too expensive to buy renewables. It's cheaper to buy from the market. It's cheaper to buy somewhere else. It's too expensive to do local renewable energy. But that's a strictly very limited view of cost. It doesn't take into account environmental impact. It doesn't take into account job creation. It doesn't take into account community wealth building. So if we actually had a much more robust value around cost, could also make it more economically feasible for PICO to put the resources there. So that's another shift.
Can I, this is Lena, can I just add something in response to that question really quickly?
Sure.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Great. So the other thing is that PICO really has not been neutral on this issue. PICO, if you look at Pennsylvania compared to even our neighboring states in New Jersey and Maryland and Delaware, Pennsylvania has some pretty backwards legislation around renewable energy and how we procure our renewable energy. And PICO and their parent company Exelon have been really actively lobbying against renewables. And so that's just another thing to highlight, is they've not been neutral on this issue. And so in addition to the question of, well, why target PICO instead of the legislature, one thing to highlight is that their parent company Exelon has been targeting the legislature. And so shining a light on the fact that they've not been neutral, and that as a utility that claims to be a leader and that claims to be serving our communities, they've been so backwards, I think is critical, because they do spend millions of dollars on their brand and on their advertising in the area. So they wouldn't spend money doing that unless that was important to them and they felt it was necessary for how they operate their business.
Yes, and they can also push or suggest where people are buying where companies are getting their energy from them, because while they are only providing energy, they also can lineate packages that are better or worse for the environment based off of what a client wants, and they could push for more of these environmentally friendly and safer ways of getting that energy to these larger companies, and they are choosing not to. So they have more control.
And right now, while humanity is facing dire threats from extreme climate events, PICO is only mandated to source a tiny fraction of 1% additional renewable energy each year, solar energy in particular. And they could do way more than that. That's all they have to do. So, as others have said, we're trying to expand their understanding. They're required to do the least cost energy over time. And so we're looking at what climate crisis is wreaking on humanity over time. There are going to be huge costs in health and the destruction of civilization, basically, if we don't have leadership in moving rapidly towards a renewable energy economy. So we are trying to help them redefine costs, and we're trying to require that they go lobby for what they need to be renewable energy leaders, and that they change what they're mandated to do.
Are there any other questions? Did we answer that question? I think we've answered that question pretty fully.
And again, if you want, if you have a question, you can either type it in the chat or you can unmute and ask away. Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I don't know who mentioned it, whether it was Julie or Anthony, but someone said something about building urban rural relationships. And I was curious if there was more to be said about that. I'm interested in that. I've been following the struggles in the rural areas against the fracking and pipelines, like what's going on in Lancaster County and so on, and wishing that there was more communication and alliance between what's happening in the cities and what's happening in the rural areas. And I've been trying to get more people in the city interested in the pipeline fights. And I was just wondering if you're working at all, if there's any kind of communication with the rural people who are fighting pipelines and fracking, or what did you mean by the urban rural connections?
Great question.
Yeah, thank you for that. Tower is building both deeply within the city and the suburbs and out into the counties. And we now have organizers throughout the central counties of the state and in the suburbs, metro area, and in the city. I personally just was out in South Central Pennsylvania for the past 2 weeks, massive Trump territory, for miles, yard signs saying, Trump, and people really are, really Trump supporters out there, but all families care about clean water and clean air and education and health. And so there's some really shared commonalities across these geographic and identity differences. And part of our challenge is, how do you connect? How do you message? How do you really build a statewide movement? And this is the cutting edge for Power right now, is how to move statewide with our allies and develop this conversation very deeply in many diverse places.
Great. Because I do feel that that's what's needed, is to have a statewide effort, because I think that, the state legislature is also obviously really important. And if, there's the opportunity, because there is so much disappointment and anger actually in Trump counties, the Republican counties, that are so upset about eminent domain, and how the corporations are they're claiming that they're public utilities, and they're not. It's like Sunoco, it's not a public utility, yet they're taking people's properties. And so I think there's an opportunity, a political opportunity for 2018, and I'd love to see how we could do more in terms of building a statewide movement. And, I heard about in Nebraska, they have something called Bold Nebraska, where they've been able to form an alliance between environmentalists and the conservative ranchers, to stop a pipeline. And, I'd like to sort of, take some lessons there and do something in Pennsylvania, maybe calling it Proud Pennsylvanians, and use some language that would appeal to the right and left. Like, we're proud of our state, we're proud that oil was discovered here, we're proud of our coal history, and now we want to be proud of our future and renewables. Like try and start a statewide campaign, to demand that there be a state plan to reach, renewables, 100% renewable by 2050 or whatever. To have a ban on any future fossil fuel infrastructure within 10 years. And 3, to create green jobs, both in the rural and urban areas. I've never done a statewide campaign, so I have no idea how you go about doing that, but it's an interest of mine. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Tuesday at 5 o'clock at the Power office. We need you.
Okay.
It's very much the lines we're thinking along, but we need the people. We need the people power, and we're also gathering in, financial resources and building capacity to do this work, because it does take having a reach out into the state, a deep reach. But this is exactly what we're thinking about, and we need you.
Yeah, and I second what Rabbi Julie said, and also just want to add, I think, I think those are all, I'm totally in agreement with that effort. And I know there's a few other groups who are thinking about those things. And so I think one is, it's like, we all have roles to play, and it's how do we align ourselves with each other as we build that out. And so I think one, it'd be great to have offline after this to really follow up with you about what you've been thinking, and then we can connect with a couple other groups who are thinking about it too. How do we actually build something? So
Great. Yeah, I can't come on the 25th because I have something else, visitors from out of town, but I'd like to come to a meeting if they keep me in the loop somehow.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think for me, and I'm speaking totally for myself, and the nonpartisan work that we do is the fact that this bypasses a lot of the storylines that we have been told about the us and them of the rural versus the city. The suffering that we heard when we walked through that 100 miles crossed all of them, and we're all saying the same thing.
Yeah.
So we're getting to a place where the need is greater than the us or the them, and we are becoming part of the whole, and realizing that this work is about all of us being united together in a whole to solve this problem. Because if you listen to the woman almost crying in Bucks County about the homelessness in her community, and then you go into North Philly with the kids who are begging to be able to use the skills they've learned to have a job, you start to realize that it doesn't matter whether you're in a rural area and talking about fracking, or whether you're talking about the loss of factory work in the city. We're in need of looking at things in a different way. Right. And the only way to really move that and to get the powers to be in a way, whether we're talking the government or industry, to really look at that is if we are willing to unite together and no longer let that storyline stop us.
Right.
So we are at time, and then there's one other question, which we will answer as we close. I just changed the slide real quick. Just again, you all probably have already seen the website, but the website's here. You can click on that. And we also have a workshop that we do. If you're interested in doing the workshop with your congregation or with your community, we're happy to kind of talk about that as a plan. You can contact myself, Terry, or Rabbi Julie. And again, just to reiterate, on the 25th at 5 o'clock here at the Power Office, we were having a meeting. And it's not, if you can't make it, just let us know. This is not the end-all be-all meeting, but it's a way to kind of go deeper. And so we will follow up. So
you can send a message to Jay Greenberg at ourphiladelphia.org, and I'll put you on the list of people who will get future notices of our meetings. Jay Greenberg at ourphiladelphia.org.
And just to close, I'm gonna turn it to Rabbi Julie and Terry on this last piece. It's really about like what do we need from community and how are we serving them and how are we helping to support their awareness and education. And I'll just close with that. And thank you all for making the time today.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for coming and being a part of this call and being willing to be a part of this conversation. And that is part of how we do this. And this is how it grows in communities, is that people who care are willing to listen in and share this with your community. Joining Power, which is always a wonderful opportunity to learn and be a part of this mission with us, or Equate and joining in and being a part of their mission, and us and our different organizations being willing to work together with the communities and the networks that we are all building that quite often overlap a great deal, to be able to unite together to make these work and have these conversations are definitely how it is. And if your community is not already involved in this, then give us a call and we are willing to come out and talk with your community or have you share and help you be able to share this with your community.
And just a final response to Nikesha's question here, what support do you need from the community you are serving and how are we making everyone aware? I think just my response is just keep showing up, keep connecting, and we'll get stronger and stronger together. So thank you all so much, and I look forward to lots more work together. Onward and upward.
Great. Thank you, everyone.